G'day, I'm Dr. Graham Walker. I'm a science communication academic here at the Australian National University. We try to make science fun and exciting and I guess a little bit unusual, like this hovercraft here. So I get to teach master's students how to build things like this, how to communicate science, and then they go off all the way through Australia working with our friends at Questacon on the science circus, showing people things like this. So to get our hovercraft to work, we have to overcome the force of friction. Friction is a kind of resistance when two things are rubbing together. If you've ever slid across the floor in your socks lower the amount of friction, you slide really well. Our hovercraft works in a similar way. At the moment, I can't move because there's too much friction, too much rubbing between the hovercraft and the floor. But as soon as I turn these on, we're gonna have just a little cushion of air that's gonna lift the hovercraft up and it's gonna stop that friction. So the way our hovercraft works, we've got our leaf blowers here. They're like a giant hairdryer that's gonna push air out. Once the air gets to here, all of the air in this space, it's all squashed together because it's been pushed in there by the leaf blower. We call that high pressure. Air will always move from where it's more squashed, where the pressure's high, to where it's less squashed, say out here. This is what makes the air move from here out to here. And as it travels, it creates that little cushion that the hovercraft can sit up on. And it's that air that reduces the amount of friction. Now, once the blowers are on, it doesn't mean we're going to start moving. It just means there's no friction. If I want to move, then I need another force. I need a pushing force. This pushing force should take me this way. It's not very high tech, and hovercrafts as an idea, they've been around for a fair while. Amazing vehicles that can travel over land and even over water, but not this one unless you want to go for a swim. It all comes down to reducing that amount of friction. In the future, and even now, we're using things like magnetic levitation to overcome friction. And once you've got no friction, you don't need much energy, you don't need much pushing to go a long way really fast. And that's the kind of transport we're going to need more of in the future.
Meet Leafy. Can't spot him? No, neither can I. Well, that's because he's a master of the skies with leaf shapes all over his body, which makes him really hard to spot because he looks a lot like seaweed.
Do you need some help?
I always do. So his name isn't really Leafy, is it?
No, it's actually Love, Heart and 40.
So they're dragons, right? So can they like breathe fire and fly?
No, they're a little bit different. Unfortunately, they can't breathe fire, but they can kind of fly underwater with their fins. They have really good camouflage, and you can see all the little bits of fins on their body, which helps them hide.
So what is camouflage?
Well, camouflage is it helps an animal blend in with its environment to help protect them from predators that might otherwise try and eat them.
So they're not only really good at hiding, are they? The dads are really good at parenting too, aren't they?
They are actually. It's the fathers that kind of become pregnant, just like a seahorse, and they look after their babies.
Really?
Yeah.
How many babies can they have at a time?
Anywhere from 40 to maybe 150. That's a lot.
I bet he has his hands full, or his fins full, I suppose.
He's a pretty busy dad.
So, do you actually breed dragons here?
We do actually. We're very good at breeding the weedy sea dragon. So the biggest difference between them is that the leafy sea dragons have lots of leafy decorations, which makes them very different to the weedies, which only have a few.
So do you guys have a nursery here?
We do actually, because we do breed quite a lot of animals here. So we have bred the weedy sea dragons, and we do keep them in the nursery. But the leafy sea dragons, no one's actually bred them in the world. So it'd be really exciting if we did that.
Really? Why is that?
They just have different requirements, and it's going to take time for us to work it out.
So why is it important to breed them?
Well, it's important to breed them because they're actually an endangered species or threatened species. They're only occurring in southern Australia and also in the eastern pocket of Australia too. So it is very important for us to have them here so so 40 and Loveheart can have babies one day, and we can hand rear some of these babies too.
So you mean I can't take a baby dragon home with me?
Unfortunately, no. There's not enough out in the wild.
Well, I guess that means I'm going to have to come here again for a visit.
My boat with soap can not only float, but it moves by itself without using a remote. Pretty tricky. And it's not even using that fancy magical motorised soap either. It's just using plain old dishwasher soap. Well, let's see what happens when we put my plain cardboard boat in the water. See, not moving anywhere, but a bit of soap will help. But first, let me show you how to make the boat. I'm going to make my little boat here move all by itself by only using soap. What you'll need to make these boats is some cardboard or a foam tray, some scissors, a marker, a toothpick, some ordinary dish soap, and a tray filled with water. So the first step is to mark out your boat. So think of it as a house. You've got two long walls either side, a pointed roof, and we'll draw a long line across the bottom for the ground. Then we're going to cut out kind of a triangle shape, and that's going to be our propeller. Perfect, time to cut it out. Make sure you have an adult around because scissors are sharp. And just cutting out that little triangle. Perfect. Boat's done, time to add the motor. So you get out a toothpick, dip it in your dish soap, make sure you got lots on there, and we're going to place it on the inside of the propeller section. So right on each of those three edges. Now let's place it in the water. Oh, what? It did it. I'm going to try and make a bigger one and see if it works as well. Oh. But how is it that adding soap to a boat makes it go forward? Soap is a surface active agent, which means it breaks down the surface tension of the water. As the surface tension is broken up, it creates enough force to push my little boat across the surface. Why don't you try this at home too, with different sized boats? So I've tried a big one and a small one, but I think it's time to race them. Oh wow, the little one wins. Little pocket rocket. So back to those autumn leaves. Did you know that when and which colour the tree leaves turn actually depends on the species of the tree? Leaves don't just fall off. The tree cuts them off in a highly controlled process where a layer of cells grows between the tree and the leaf stalk. This means that the leaf doesn't leave a wound on the tree when it detaches. Fallen leaves help the seeds underground. Lying on the forest floor, they protect the seeds and keep them warm during the winter. Fallen leaves put a lot of nutrients back into the soil as they decompose, fueling the next generation of plants that will grow up in the spring.
My name is Mauro Taplin. I'm 11 years old and I helped to build the frugal forest out of junk. This trunk is actually made of plant pots with old socks stretched over them. It's a kind of a community art project and it's been touring around for a while, but at the moment it's at the Sydney Opera House. These leaves are made of real estate signs like the kind you might see outside of houses that are being sold. I think building the frugal forest over about 3 years it took, and it's still growing now, it really changed the way I think about real rainforests. I now have a far greater appreciation for the beautiful shapes and the textures of the living things in it, and how difficult they can be to recreate out of junk. There is no tip in a forest. Everything is reused, recycled constantly. The dead leaves might fall and turn into soil, and then the plants can suck those up through their roots. And it's just a whole constant changing cycle. I think we as humans could really learn from that. There were a lot of people involved in making the forest, and quite a lot of them were scientists. An ornithologist is someone who studies birds, so we got ornithologists to help us with making the soundtrack. So a botanist is someone who studies plants and the way they grow and how they live. And an ecologist is someone who studies kind of ecosystems, where all the members of that sort of society interact with each other. They helped us to figure out what things look like and trying to make it as realistic as possible, but still so that on closer inspection you can tell that it's made of rubbish. I think it's impossible to say that there is a coolest thing in this forest. I do have a few favourites. I think quite a lot of people like the fungi, and the rocks are pretty great. We've got the Esky rock over there. It was a very gradual process turning the rubbish into rainforest. We've still got about 200, give or take, swimming caps left over from someone who donated them. Being a very long process and quite a magical one, really, because we're turning things that were destined for the tip into something beautiful and something that can inspire people. When I grow up, I think I'd like to do botany and science communicating, telling people about the wondrous things in the natural world. I also quite like art and photography, and I think maybe I'd also like to be a writer. I would like to change the world in a positive way by making people think more deeply about the way the world works and how we can make it a better place, having no wars and no waste. I'd really like other children to look at rubbish differently, see it as a resource and something that can be turned into beautiful things.
Royal National Park to meet Uncle Dean, who's going to show me some really special plants and trees. Hi, Uncle Dean, how are you going?
Yeah, good morning, young sister.
Now, where are these special trees?
We're standing right in front of the special tree. This tree is what we call a red bloodwood, and the old people were using this for a long, long time. It's a serious medicine tree. From the root of the tree, to the trunk, to the branches, to the small leaves, even the barks. Every part of this tree has medicine and healing properties. It's a very special tree in our culture.
So why does it get its name?
Well, I'll show you why it gets its name. It oozes this red sap, which is the tree's blood. And that's how it gets its name, the red bloodwood, from the red sap.
I see, yeah, wow. And what is sap?
Sap is the blood of the tree. Just like us, trees aren't much different. So they have to move things up and down their system. It's their blood. And that's where we get our medicine.
So how do you get the medicine from the sap, though?
Well, if we watch that tree at the right time of year, we can just pick the little crystals off. But then we can also get it when it's like this and take some of that bark that sap is running through, put it in our little cooler here that's in front of us, and soak it in water to extract that medicine.
So what kind of medicines?
It's a painkiller, it's an antiseptic, so we can put it on our sores or our toothaches. It's a pretty strong medicine. We can learn a lot from using natural medicines because they're all here for free.
Now, kids shouldn't just go out and pick anything, should they? They shouldn't try bush medicines themselves.
Children shouldn't go out and just put things in their mouth out of nature because there are a lot of poisonous things in the bush. And the last thing we want is for a child to be harmed because they didn't have the education or the understanding of these medicines and foods. Always go with someone who knows.
Welcome back to today's show on The Secret Life of Food. Today's special guests are the common peanut, some funny looking chips, and some squishy lollies. All my guests look, feel, and taste completely different. But what they all have in common is that they have a secret store of energy that we're going to activate, all through the power of something called chemistry. But what is chemistry? Chemistry is a name given to a bunch of stuff that has to do with matter. Next slide, please. But what is matter? And why does it matter? Basically, matter is the stuff all around you. Matter is literally anything that has mass and takes up space. So anything from yesterday's brekkie to your favorite toy. So this, and even this consists of matter. Now that we've introduced the words chemistry and matter, let's kick forward with our experiment. I invite our first special guest to come out of his shell, zing, and enter the stage. To see his power unleash, I will need a flame, some long tweezers, of course, some safety goggles, and a lab coat. Our three special guests today contain different forms of stored energy. Our peanuts and our funny shaped chips contain oil, while our squishy lollies contain sugar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a flame to the peanut, and what should take place is a chemical reaction to release the energy inside the peanut. Remember, don't try this at home, I'm an expert. Today, we're using a portable burner. Because the peanut has energy inside it, it will start to burn. And once it does burn, we can take it away from the flame. So what is happening here is the peanut continues to burn because of all the energy stored inside it. Instead, when we eat a peanut, our body converts the energy stored inside it into energy we need to keep running. Next up, let's see how the funny shaped chip burns. Once again, even though this is burning, our bodies, when we eat it, is able to convert that energy into energy we need to keep running. Now, not to ignore our final guest, who was invited here because of what they were made of, and that is another form of stored energy. Let's see what happens when we burn it. What you'll notice is that when the squishy lolly burns, it actually begins to melt. That's because the energy it's made up of is sugar. And out of my three special guests today, the winner is me, because I get to eat all three. Maybe not.